to us about what does Jason Borne sound like?
Sounds like somebody just trying to get through life. He's a victim of something that he can't quite work out, and yet he's skilled in things that he can't quite work out. It's a profoundly confused character that I think will work because it represents all of us. I mean, we're all in this position, trying to figure out why our lives are working, why our lives are puzzling to us. And, so in a way, that's a big part of it, but mainly you have to understand that Jason Borne was created in 2002, and Doug Liman, all he really wanted to do was make an indie Bond. That's what he was trying to do. And all he wanted from the music was it to be everything that Bond wasn't. Everything that every other action film wasn't. So it was not. It was all created from negative space. It was all reactionary. So every part of the score was, what would we normally do on an action film? Well, I'll do the opposite. You make it sound big, so Bourne I made it sound small. You use lots of orchestra, so I didn't use much orchestra. And it was all really just me trying to be different from everything I'd learnt up to that point. And in a way, that was Doug's kind of brilliance, and I guess he cast me at the right point in my career when I was looking to do that. So it worked out.
You're so good at using colors, orchestral colors, in terms of finding a sound for every movie. So for something like Bourne and wanting to do the opposite, do you still think in terms of sort of an instrumentation, thinking, well, for the small stuff, maybe piano and strings would work well? Or is that just sort of dictated by whatever you have been listening to, the film itself? Obviously, if you're having a talky moment or a dramatic moment in a movie, you might not want to have screaming trumpets over it.
Yeah, no, there's practicalities to these things. You have to be careful about that. But one of the hardest things about that first movie was that we had broken a lot of rules. Things were not how everybody expected them, and you get kickback. So whether it's the studio saying, I don't know, this doesn't sound like The Rock. So they're puzzled about it. Or you go onto the dub stage and the guys are mixing it and they can't figure out how to mix it because you've got stuff that's I mean, in that movie I was trying to sound like Massive Attack, I was trying to sound like Bjork, and then at the last minute we threw a few strings in, and that was basically what it was. And those types of score, they don't work the same way. It's great if you want to make a score that works really easily. You just use nice long sounds that kind of will sit under dialogue, and they'll sit under sound effects and a bit of pulsing, and that's really all you need. But this wasn't that. It was all sorts of weird and wonderful things, and we had to. And the whole score was written, and then at the last minute, I spent 2 weeks on the dub stage, which you should never do as a composer. Re-editing it, trying things. I moved things around. I changed the keys of cues to see if they fitted better with dialogue. And that's basically it's a massive, apparently chaotic. Creative process, but in the end of it, as long as you're kind of everybody's keeping in the same direction, then it worked out.
So you were breaking the rules.
But yes, I mean, I was reacting against the rules, and then the backside of that is that you end up with things that don't work the way everyone would expect them to work. And so it gets a little awkward as you try and explain to everybody, well, let's just see if we can make this work. And they're sitting there on the dub stage, and it's, I don't know, $15,000 a day, and they're looking at you like, what do you mean make this work? You're a composer, you're supposed to make this work before we get to this point, so.
But, well, when you broke the rules, but because Bourne has been a lot of feature films, so that breaking the rules becomes into the rule for like the next and the next, or something like that?
Yeah, that was the problem. So, I mean, I was allowed to develop the style a little bit within the first 3 movies, but now I come back to it 9 years later, everybody's knows what that sounds like. And, you know, it's basically every action TV show you have. I think we basically decided we weren't going to try and break the rules again, so we've gone back to the beginning, and it sounds really pretty much, well, it is the first three movies just together.
Is that satisfying to sort of return to?
The idea is that it's satisfying for the audience. You know, the idea of the composer is that you're trying to make the experience as good as possible. You know, going to the cinema together, we're basically all collaborating as the audience in a group therapy session. That's what it is. It's 40,000 years of sitting around the fire trying to figure out our problems with stories. They're metaphors, they're allegories, they're all the things that we need sometimes to make sense of our own lives. So my job is to try and come in and support that as best I can. And in this point, with that story, in this kind of world, as things have kind of progressed since the last Bourne, it was very important to Paul, and I think everybody, that you felt very comfortably back in that world. So that was easy in a way.
How was that different from working a movie like How to Train Your Dragon, for example, because that's pure fantasy and epicness and adventure? And what was your inspiration for that movie in specific? Because it has action, but it's more for kids.
It is. You have to understand that there's no difference whatsoever between Bourne and Dragons. They're both fantasies.
One is more like human, and the other one I think it has like more heart and it feels because of the relationship with Douglas.
Yeah, but the difference is that the heart of Bourne is in Matt Damon's eyes. And you look into his eyes, so the camera work is more important than the music. The music's a kind of is a rail for everyone to hold on to as we go on the journey. Whereas with Dragons, I was required to make sure that the feeling was supported of the imagery. The camera moves, the flying, as I was saying, the flying, it's all about flying.
As opposed to falling.
Yeah, no, I mean, it literally is that. I know I was making a joke about it, but it was very, I mean,
Very similar.
yeah, it's very similar.
Hey, speaking of which, you made a comment on the panel about it seemed to imply an anti-John Williams feel. Now, let me explain before because I don't want to come off the song at all. Like, when I first started covering this and making a series of YouTube videos, what they would say, I asked them what their inspirations were, and they said John Williams.
Yeah.
And I felt this collective, who was your inspiration? Because it didn't sound like it was John Williams, or was it?
My inspiration, of course, there was lots of inspiration from movie composers, but I make a big point of trying not to encourage people to listen to movie scores, to see if they could find that bigger world that really the movie scores were all ripped off from. You know, that's the thing, is that John Williams is a magnificent composer, amazing composer, but you know, you can go into Richard Strauss's Tillorgenspiel and you will find that language. Obviously, you'll find that language in Hanson's Second Symphony. You'll find that language in Rimsky-Korsakov's Scheherazade. I mean, depending on which film it is, you can find within the classical language, or if you go to Bourne, you will find the language of Massive Attack in Bjork. You know, so it's just a question of where you go and searching for it. But if you search always within, it's basically, I say, it's like a snake eating its tail. And the danger is we won't get out of that cycle, and there'll be no new invention. So I make a point of trying to encourage everybody to go out and, you know, listen to other music than film music.
When I hear your stuff, personally, it reminds me of